Yeah, much closer. Right, the next item up before us is our submission to the Local Government Amendment Bill on system improvements. That is also relative to the addendum that we had come through from Dave. So I'll hand over to Tracy to introduce this item. Thanks, Tracy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, councillors, this was a little unusual, but what we did do is attach the bill because it was only 22 pages to let you peruse the bill. The submission is a crisp and tight submission that Alejandro and Sydney have pulled together, and they'll take you through the key points. The one point that I would like to make, I guess, is just that the term around wellbeing and the submission point that we wanted to make around removing it from the legislation is not going to automatically the next day ensure some of the reductions in costs that we know the government's wanting to achieve, and we also know that they've got other tools in their toolkit. And the other important issue is around flood protection. The term that is used is flood protection. The term that we commonly use and the sector commonly use is around flood management structures and drainage. So it helps that government is talking the same language. Now, we do have the addendum that was sent out to you day before yesterday, and Dave will assist there just around that clarity of standing orders. But I'll pass over to Sydney and Alejandro.
Good morning. Thank you for the introduction, Tracy. So the Governance and Administration Committee are currently consulting on the Local Government System Improvements Amendment Bill. This bill is the latest in a series of amendments made to the statutory purpose in Section 10 of the Local Government Act 2002, the LGA. You will see that, as Tracy said, today's addendum contains a paper on the standing orders as a part of the bill submission, and consultation will close on the 27th of August. The bill aims to reduce the recent council rate increases by narrowing and refocusing council's spending on delivering core services and infrastructure. This includes removing reference to the four wellbeings, the social, economic, environmental, and cultural wellbeing of communities. The current framing of the purpose of local government was put in place by the Local Government Community Wellbeing Amendment Act in 2019. The latest amendment reversed changes introduced in 2012 to reintroduce the wellbeings and remove the core services clause. WRC staff supports the intention to keep rates affordable in principle and in practice. However, staff also highlight that the expectations need to be managed as to what the removal of wellbeing terminology in the Act will actually achieve. As noted in the bill's regulatory impact statement, removing specific reference to wellbeing may not automatically lead to significant savings for councils. Overall, staff are agnostic on the removal of the wellbeings and focus on requesting clear definitions on a range of provisions in this bill. Democracy Services have identified one provision in particular that requires clarity, and this is the model standing orders, which is included as the standing orders paper on page 3 of the addendum. This submission point would outline concerns around potential increased costs and decreases in democratic transparency for this council. It is unclear what these updated standard orders will be, and this change from the status quo has the capacity to cause direct and indirect cost to council should elements of the 2003 Standards New Zealand model remain. So to illustrate these concerns, WRC staff considers it important to include the point in the addendum into the council submission under the unclear definitions headline in paragraph 15. We will now take questions through the chair.
Thank you for that. I'll start off just around on page 59 and examples and its potential unintended consequences. Just that point 10. I always like to see in our submissions an example of what we mean. You know, you've done it really well in point 16, and I'd probably make the same comment around point number 12 as well. Just an example of what it means for us, you know, which to me gives that clarity around the understanding on what we're talking about. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Just seeking clarification, you'd like a couple of those practical examples inserted into the submission, or?
If possible, if it's easy enough to do, just provides that clarity for those that are reading it and that on what we've seen that works or doesn't work, depending on the example at the time. Ben.
Oh, I just want to say it's great that regional council is having an input into these, because the idea of flood protection covering everything and, you know, natural hazards mitigation, they wouldn't think about that down in Wellington necessarily. So it's good that we picked those things up. So yeah, cool. But just on that also, good that we picked up that Dave has mentioned that potentially Standards New Zealand could be taxing us all for every time we use the new standing orders. I don't know if you're going on to that yet.
Did you want to have a comment on the standing orders piece now, Dave? If I've got a speaking order, if I can get Dave a microphone, please. Thank you.
Happy to take it as we go, really, but that would be the primary concern. In the past, we would have had to pay for each copy of standing orders, for example, that each elected member wanted. So if 5 members wanted to have their own copy of standing orders, we'd have to purchase 5 copies. And likewise, we were not able to put them on the website. Some councils tried to put them on their website in the 2000s, and Standards New Zealand threatened them with legal action for making standing orders public. And I've popped onto their website this morning. The cost for Standards New Zealand to provide a PDF of the old standing orders is $106 plus GST. And that's for the old one. I would imagine the new ones would probably be more than that.
Thanks for that, Dave. Stu?
Thanks. Hey, I was just a bit confused, and maybe I've misread it, but on, and excuse me, in terms of the addendum and the original, but on the original, it's page 60, there's that table there that talks about what we propose doing. It was just the way that bit, the performance of regulatory functions, was crossed out.
So that's what was originally in the bill,
Yeah.
and we removed that because
And where I was looking for clarification was, if you think about environmental management, flood protection, drainage, all that sort of stuff, regulatory functions is a critical part of delivering on all this. And I was just a bit confused as to going with that one.
I think, yeah, after with the consultation with the SMEs, we were just trying to make, we were just writing that out differently, but would you like performance of regulatory functions to be kept
Well,
in the submission?
on the back of what I just said, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that we can't do unless we have the ability to regulate, i.e. flood protection, stopping people from doing stuff that's undermining it, et cetera, and acknowledging rhetoric around what our future as a regional council is. But yeah, just curious what the others thought on.
Just through the chair, the term environmental management was used as an umbrella,
Yeah.
I guess, which would include our regulatory functions. We also had suggested or keep D, undertake roles and responsibilities as required by legislations to cover that. But if we want to amend the submission to be explicit and keep those regulatory functions in, then we're happy to do so.
Yeah, I mean, my gut feeling is we should, but boss is sitting. I don't think it's going to impact what Mr. Jones decides to do with us. That was all, yeah.
Ian?
Thanks, guys. And yeah, pretty straightforward submission. I think considering how core it is to us, it could have been really good to have a work for a short slot to give feedback first. It just feels like, but I understand, I'm kind of seeing it as quite a vanilla submission, considering that there is quite some of us that of how we view what local government is. The things that I had to add for consideration, trying to keep it brief, is that core purpose statement. It talks about the most cost-effective and efficient manner, and that I get the intention there, but it does really bring in that short-termism when it also talks about, but keeping in touch the long term. So maybe if we touch on just the risk of that creeping in, and since it's already a habit. On affordability, we're obviously supporting that concept, but we could flesh it out with a bit more context, like saying that affordability is kind of an agglomeration of a whole lot of things in society. And so, in context, everything else wasn't going up, maybe the affordability would be viewed differently, right? But the issues here are so much deeper than that. And then I'm mindful that the rates capping may well happen, and will then be a separate thing that happens. But if it, I suppose, so I guess we might not put it in here, but just something to consider is that if there was a cap of a certain percentage, maybe asking that there is an exemption pathway should something untoward, unexpected, force majeure type thing occur, maybe to take away for future. Because I'm mindful, we try very much for our own policy to stay below 10%, and we're very good at doing that. But you just never know, like. So that was just some feedback there.
Through the chair, I do understand that there is an exemption pathway for officials who are crafting are understanding
Looking
there are
at that.
things outside our control that we may need to recoup, and there is a pathway being crafted.
That would seem sensible. But yeah, I'm super frustrated about the fact that the purpose of local government isn't something that we can get agreement off between both sides of Parliament. I loved the article about how Auckland Council had some opinions on pretty much telling them to get stuff, and that's quite arrogant. I share those views, but and I find it really sad that they don't get local government, and frankly I don't think any party in central in Parliament does. But I support from our organisation's point of view.
Noel, I'll come to you online.
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, good as gold.
Okay, thank you. Look, this is a hot potato, as we all realise. I've seen it come and go. I've been around local government now for 18 years and a little bit before that with rivers and drainage. The government of the day focuses on well-beings or whatever. So I'm not worried about that, because at the end of the day, most councils act responsibly towards their communities anyway. And at the moment, we've got a section of the community who are wanting rates caps. There will also be an outcry when we can't do things because there are rate caps, and it won't possibly fall within the exemptions, etc. So I'm not cynical, but we've had our good times and we're having hard times. So the swings and roundabouts of this is the ballot box. Every 3 years we get judged, and so I'm not trying to turn this into a political, but government is really trying to run on the back of a political issue here. So we should, I think what's been highlighted is appropriate, and government will make its decision, because they've made up their minds. They're just going through a process. I'm probably not going to add a lot to the conversation right now, but the issue for me is, heard it all before. One government comes in, left-leaning, the Wellbeings are in, right-leaning, the Wellbeings are out. Been through all this, so la vie. So thanks, Warren.
Good as gold. You didn't sound cynical at all to me. Robbie.
Thank you. Going back to Stu's point of view before, so performance and regulatory functions, that wording. So performance is what a targeted ratepayer is paying for, I'd imagine. Just clarifying what that actually means in there.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it just means, other than the word performance, if you put undertaking, so it's just saying that one of our functions, one of the core functions of councils is to undertake regulatory functions. So however we pay for those functions is determined through our fees and charges of our long-term plan process. This is just purely saying, what are the things council does? One of them is regulatory functions across a wide range of things. It's not only RMA. We heard from Patrick's team this morning around the clean vessel. So it's just saying it's a core function of what we do.
Is that it, Robbie? Sorry. Yep, okay. Ben.
I think, Tracy, we should be giving Democracy Dave a prize today for picking up a significant piece of information. And I think we should strengthen this with some additional wording, because I note that the explanatory part of the bill says the bill is intended to address cost of living concerns and it's concerned with lack of fiscal discipline among councils, etc., etc. Dave, with his amendment, has just saved potentially $1,000,000 because $1,200 per councillor. There are 838 councillors in New Zealand. So there's $1 million was about to be given to Standards New Zealand unnecessarily. I have. No, but I mean, I just think this is really quite significant what we've discovered here that would have gone through unnoticed. And we're only talking about our own council. I think we should talk about the other councils, if there are, and what the current costs are, and refer back to the whole purpose of the bill is providing regulatory relief, strengthening transparency, accountability, and prioritising, reducing expenditure. So,
Leandro, can I get you to kill your like? Mike? Yeah, thanks, Trace.
This could be career limiting, the comment I'm about to make. So that was picked up through Dave's conversations with his colleagues from Local Government New Zealand. And it was, identified as, hey guys, this does have a demonstrable cost. So Dave, LG&Z, and also Sydney for spinning it around so we can say to the government, look, you can give one message here, but actually there's another message right hand that you need to understand. Popping this down pops this up, so definitely.
just whether you actually put in the dollar figures, because it's much more spectacular, $1 million cost saving than just one count.
Jennifer.
It's just going to be positive in saying I actually do like the parts about the regulatory relief for councils and the transparency, accountability, and the measuring and publicising. Those three things. Thank you for putting that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think just summing up so we can understand the changes we're making. So inserting into the submission narrative examples around the matters raised in point 10 and point 12, and we can readily access those. Keep the explicit reference into the performance of our regulatory functions. I think it is good that we include the narrative in the addendum, and if we can get fabulous democracy up some quick figures, also include what those figures might look like for perhaps a standard year of council operation for this council. And also just wanting to pick up the questions that Councillor Nicol raised around that, just making sure we're having a long-term view and that affordability is part of a wider spectrum, and this is only one cog in it.
I just wonder whether we could include the potential costs for all councils rather than just ours.
I think we'd make reference to what a cost could look like for our council. I think we have to lodge this tomorrow.
27th.
Okay, 27th. And include narrative in terms of if you multiplied it by X.
Yep.
Okay, it's just a question. I really love how you added some stuff around the other core functions because it looked very TA focused. But it just occurred to me the delivering on treaty settlements aspect, just out of the nature of, Crown does settlement and then they kind of hand over a whole lot to us. Does that not also make it a core thing, being such a religious sort of Yeah, I mean, I wondered if you'd thought about that. And
Yes, when we were putting the submission together, sorry, through the chair, if we had a look at it, we could have gone A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H down
right.
through to X.
how
That's
did
what,
you make the call?
well, there are some things I think that were very core and very central to what we do, flood management and drainage. And it's really helping government understand what tangible resource regional council functions, because I do not believe that they do. But then rather than
Making a big list
explicitly
that-
state everything, we went with that D, undertake roles and responsibilities as required by legislation or other activities and services required by legislation,
Oh,
because
yeah. So I really like that. Yeah.
yeah,
'Cause
if we
it's a-
named them, we'd leave something out. So it was just a catch-all.
Thank you. Wanted to understand.
But that seems to be the end of questions. We have the motion in front of us. It will drop down to 3B, noting
So-
those.
Sorry, one question.
Oh, sorry, Noel. I missed
Sorry,
you.
one question. And at the start of the submission, that bullet point 7, council is agnostic. Sorry, is agnostic to whether the term wellbeing remains or is amended by legislation. Are we saying that we have no preference? Because the way I read agnostic can be different to what someone else says. So I just want to make sure that we are saying what I think we're saying.
Yeah, Tracy did touch on that at the beginning, but no,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, sorry, I had problems with connection at some stage.
Sure.
Through the chair, Councillor Smith, that's exactly what we're saying. If you want us to be explicit, as you say, that we do not have a preference, then we're happy to amend the submission in that regard.
I would prefer it that way, but I'll rely on others' thoughts. Thank you.
I think that is the message around it, so we can pick that up.
Thank you.
So, thanks. Thank you, Ben. Second, thank you, Chris. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. Thank you very much, team, for your submission work there. Righto, next up, we have the submission on Rotorua District's Council Plan, change number 8, and around natural hazards. I think we have Dawn up. Alejandro's still hanging in there, so. Yep, hand over to you, Dawn, thank you.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou. I'm here to present our proposed submission on Plan Change 8 to the Rotorua District Plan. This update focuses on improving how natural hazards are managed across the district. Our submission kicks off by acknowledging the good work Rotorua Lakes Council has done to strengthen resilience and adopt a risk-based approach to planning. We support this direction and offer a few practical recommendations to help refine it further. Rotorua has identified floods, fault ruptures and wildfire as potential hazards that pose risks to their community. As climate change ramps up the frequency and impact of such events, it's important that we support Rotorua in building planning frameworks that are not only robust and adaptable, but grounded in best available evidence. And while Plan Change 8 presents a good step forward, we're recommending greater transparency in some areas, along with stronger alignment to national and regional guidance. In our submission, we've pointed out some missed opportunities and areas where greater clarity would strengthen the plan. Let me walk you through the key points. First being risk assessment. So currently the plan only requires risk assessments for developments in areas with deep flooding, but shallow floods, especially when water moves quickly, can be just as damaging. We're therefore recommending that risk assessments be required for all new developments, regardless of flood depth. Think of it like checking the weather before you take a trip away. You wouldn't just look for heavy rain. You want to know about slip roads, strong winds, and anything else that could affect your travel plans. Point 2 is flood hazard zones. Right now, flood risk is measured only by depth, but again, velocity matters too. The speed in which water moves is just as important. Fast moving water can be more dangerous than deep water. So what we're saying is let's measure both depth and velocity to get a fuller, more accurate picture of the risk. There was a story in Tuesday's New Zealand Herald where the engineers behind Te Here Nā Aotearoa, which was a solar farm in Opotiki, they were given praise for their forward-thinking flood mitigation design as the solar farm were unaffected by recent floods. They were aware that the site could be inundated by floodwaters, and so their preparedness planning considered not only rising water levels, aka water depth, but also fast-moving flows, as well as floating debris, as well as the risk of sliding embankments. And this is a prime and very recent example of that bigger picture thinking. Key point 3 of the 4 that I'll talk about, the plan talks about resilience, which is of course most excellent, but resilience isn't enough. We also need to plan for change. Adaptation is about anticipating tomorrow's risks, not just reacting to today's. We're recommending including short, medium, and long-term adaptation planning and stronger language around assessing climate impacts. Last point 4 is technical clarity. I've taken the 300 millimetre above ground threshold requirement as an example. It's unclear why this figure was chosen, especially when national standards recommend 500 mil. We're simply asking for the evidence behind that decision or alignment with national standards. We're also looking for clarity if non-statutory guidance like WRC's climate change adaptation guidelines will be treated the same as statutory guidelines in decision making. To wrap up, our submission is about strengthening Plan Change 8 by respectfully asking for a few practical changes. Require risk assessments for all new developments, not just those in deep flood zones. Include flood velocity and hazard zone definitions to better reflect the dangers of fast-moving water. Clearer support for climate adaptation planning across short, medium and long-term timeframes. And greater transparency around technical thresholds and standards like the 300 millimetre threshold, and consistent use of terminology that aligns with the RPS. By refining Plan Change 8 with our recommendations, can enable a framework that is more clear, more adaptive, and we think better responds to the consequences of climate change and natural hazards. Thank you for your attention. Now, unfortunately, our regional resilience experts are not available today, but Alejandro and I will stealthily try and answer any questions you may have. Over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks for that, Dawn. Jen?
Plenty. Regional Council likely to give them fairly similar advice based on what they do?
Yes, they will be, and I've actually shared my draft submission with Bay of Plenty Regional Council, and I believe they were quite quite happy with what we've got in place.
Because I'm mindful our area is quite small compared to what Bay of Plenty covers for them. And then my other question was just what level we are likely to work with them in future on the adaptation stuff with anyway, mindful that it is such a small area. Because I remember in annual plan submissions, we had quite a standard blurb to some of our district councils. Is that something where it would apply or?
Yeah.
Because I can't remember it word for word.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So that will come under the discussions that we've had with this committee on the way we're approaching working with districts.
Yeah.
So it's essentially, as the districts have an interest in working with us in the adaptation space, yes. However, what we've done is make sure that we advocate for an adaptive approach through LTP submissions and through submissions to district plans. So that reflects our willingness and our call for them to think about that space, but we will work with them at the moment only when they initiate that process and ask us to participate.
Okay.
Thanks, Dawn. I think your submission is absolutely perfect. I was coming back from Apotiki on the Saturday and Sunday where it was beautiful weather from fishing, and then that event happened that week, which flooded. So I think, you know, that we do have to be aware of those events that are happening more often. I also look at events that happen at our part of the Rotorua region being Reparoa, and the flooding that's even happened there with the ramping of the river, let alone any of the weather events. So I think you've hit it on the nail, and I'd like to move it.
Thank you. Noted you're moving it. Noel, online?
Thank you. Look, it concerns me at any time and has done for years on local government in the seeming acceptance of there being some flooding and developers pushing councils to develop floodplain areas. And you're absolutely correct in your discussion in relation to velocity and depth, etc. So I just wonder why, and if I've got this wrong, please say so, but there seems to be an acceptance that low-level flooding is okay, whereas I would hope that as regional council develops its enhanced or review of the regional plan, that we basically try and not necessarily prohibit, but restrict development in areas where there is likely of inundation from water. So have I got that wrong from what you were talking about? Because it seemed to me there was an acceptance that certain areas will have water, and that the concern was velocity. But in any development where there's a chance of water, I can accept the comments about the solar farm. You know, that's not where people are living. So I'm more concerned about where inhabited dwellings, etc. So can you clarify that for me, please?
Correct. Alejandro speaking. Councillor Smith, through you, Mr. Chair. So this is already captured in two parts of the submission. So one is the request to actually include an annual exceedance probability threshold that's different just from the 1% AP. So we're asking to include smaller events. So that would be events that happen more often. So that 10% just means annual return of something that's going to happen more often. To illustrate the point to Councillor Smith, maybe an area that is known to him is the Kofi Estate in the Waikato district. So we know from the residents of the Kofi and from Waikato district that they are not able to cope the same as they thought they would with these lower level events happening more regularly and impacting that. So that ties to then our comments on the velocity. So the velocity refers to sediment control as well. So this is the happy intersection of freshwater management and natural hazards management, most of the times through rules on earthworks.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Just on to Kofi, the fact that the council have cleaned out the drains and got all the soccer balls out of the drain has taken the issue away. So, but yeah, I get what you're saying, Alejandro. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Noel. Angela?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks for a really good paper and submission. Yeah, I just wanted to back up Councillor Nichols' points around working with Bay of Plenty Regional Council. I note that we wish to be heard in the submission process. Yep. Do we ever do joint submissions with other councils, or do you prefer to sort of do it on your own?
If I can reply to that, Mr. Chair. So if I would suggest in exceptional circumstances, in the last 9-10 years, we haven't done a joint submission with others, and it's really important for further through the process and just being very clear that it's our functions, our roles and responsibilities and our funding, I guess, that we're protecting. If we go into a joint process, it may or may not lose that ability to influence.
That makes sense. Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and just a note from me on that solar farm, really interesting, and the high importance they put on health and safety for the staff too, with the remote control and that sort of thing, and obviously their all their control stuff up well out of the reach of any potential floodwaters. So pretty impressive pictures when you see those pictures of that flooding. So we have a motion in front of us. It has been moved by Mikhail and seconded by Jen. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. Would it be 2A?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. So the next one before us is a report and update on the Whangamarino Waikare Action Plan.
Kia ora koutou.
Mike joining us. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Smith had reminded us just a couple of weeks ago that we needed to get this in front of councillors, an update on the Waikare Whangamarino Action Plan. The project's been moving along really well. We meet regularly as a working group, which includes a couple of our councillors, representatives from DOC, Fish and Game, iwi, mana whenua, the community, landowners, and several other groups. As I say, it's going well. We are getting to a point where we're developing our thinking around likely or potential actions that will go into that plan. And I think it's fair to say that where we're at in our thinking is starting to cause some nervousness amongst some of the folks around the table. And part of the reason for coming to see you today is just to give you an update of where we're at in our thinking and test that thinking with you, and looking for continued support from council in terms of the direction of travel that we're taking. I just thought I'd highlight a couple of slides, some of the key issues that we're dealing with. And go to the next slide, please, Brooke. So, no surprise to anyone, the Whangamarino catchment, which includes Whangamarino wetland, Lake Waikare, and many tributary streams, is a highly complex catchment. We've got multiple flood protection and land drainage infrastructure assets in that catchment. We've got internationally recognised wetland and our second largest lake. Many of those waterways in the catchment are highly degraded, and there's no debate about that. The big question is about how we go about making improvements in the freshwater condition in that area. Because it's such a large catchment, one of the things we're looking at is breaking it up into some sub-catchments where we've got different issues needing different actions. And the next couple of slides, I'll just run through some of those key areas. So Brooke, the next slide, please. So down at the bottom of the catchment, we have Whangamarino wetland, 7,000 hectares or thereabouts of Ramsar wetland, internationally recognised wetland. So it's the receiving body for all of the material that comes down out of the hills, down the streams, through Lake Waikare. And there are significant concerns about the state of Whangamarino wetland, and Department of Conservation is finalising a report to the Ramsar Convention in Switzerland over the degradation of that wetland. We've seen changes in water level. We have significant pest and weed issues in the wetland, and as I mentioned, it's at the bottom of a large catchment. Next slide, please. One of the major inputs of material into Whangamarino wetland comes via Pangarehu Canal, which is a WRC asset which directs water. So the outflow from Lake Waikare goes down the Pangarehu Canal and into Whangamarino wetland. As you'll be aware, Lake Waikare has ongoing issues with algal blooms and has high sediment, suspended sediment. Much of that material ends up going down the Pangarehu Canal and settling out into the Whangamarino wetland, which causes a range of impacts. That canal is also a migratory route for pest fish, and as we saw last summer, can have very poor water quality many of those pest fish dying when water levels and temperatures in summertime get really bad. The next slide, please. So we have a number of lakes in the catchment, Lake Waikare being the largest of those. You can see the darker, sort of on the left, you've got Kopuera, Rotorua and Ahenawai lakes, smaller lakes on the western side of the catchment. They are sort of dark stained waters. You can see the difference in colour with Lake Waikare. So that relates to the algal blooms that are present most of the time in that lake. Again, major issues there was sediment resuspension, both from wind suspension, but also pest fish, and currently very poor habitat and limited opportunities for native aquatic plants to get re-established. Next slide, please. There are major tributary streams flowing into either Lake Waikare or into Whangamarino, and many of those have hill country erosion issues, so a lot of sediment, particularly the Matahuru catchment. We see very high sediment yields in that catchment flowing down into Lake Waikare and contributing to issues there. We see nutrients and sediment coming from other parts of the catchment. And these are the catchments where pastoral farming tends to be the dominant land use. At the top of the catchment, we have the Motukaraka sub-catchment, and it's an area we're working with landowners to trial our sustainable infrastructure decision-making framework to try and find ways to improve land drainage, but at the same time improve environmental outcomes both in the catchment and for Whangamarino wetland. And a couple more slides. Next slide, please. There's also a whole range of issues and therefore actions that we need to consider. We need to integrate across the whole of the catchment. So the Waikare Whangamarino catchment is integral to the Lower Waikato Flood Protection Scheme. The other thing, if we embark on control of pest species such as pest fish, that really has to be done at a large scale. Otherwise, we're just running risk of reinvasion and making small gains that are undone quite quickly. So I think the last slide I had, Brooke, please. These are the sorts of actions that we're looking at. We've had a technical workshop, which has a group of experts came together and gave us good advice on where we should be focusing actions in the catchment. We've got Whangamarino catchment, as you're probably aware, is a high priority in Plan Change 1. So the Environment Court judge highlighted it multiple times in the decision, in the interim decision, and it will be one of the first places we roll out farm plans in the PC1 implementation. The community and most of the people sitting around the table at the working group agree that active management of koi carp is really a really important element for the action plan. It is not a simple process of managing koi carp. It's in terms of control, there are limited control options, and also it's a, if you like, it's a forever problem, like possums. We have already significant erosion control programs going on through the ICM catchment programs and WRA funding. That needs to continue and is likely to need to increase the level of targeting and the level of change required to the point where we're looking at retiring hill country farmland and afforesting that land to reduce sediment inputs. Increased wetland extents. Obviously, the whole system naturally was dominated by wetlands, and much of that wetland area has been lost, although we've got the Whangamarino wetland. a key to treating some of the water quality issues is to increase the level of wetlands in that catchment. One of the probably really big ticket items for Waikato Regional Council will be around managing or looking at improving the management of flows and levels within the catchment over time. So we, as I say, it's fundamental to the Lower Waikato Flood Protection Scheme, but the advice that we have is that for us to make improvements to Lake Waikare and to Whangamarino wetland, we're going to have to improve the water level management of those systems. That might then have implications for our flood storage. And the final one I just wanted to highlight is that what we're working towards is everybody having a stake in Whangamarino and Waikare, everyone being involved in actions to restore the health and well-being of those water bodies. And so that last point there is about the people element and getting everyone on board and working together. So I think that's it. Thank you, Brooke. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mike. Jen. Okay, Ben.
G'day. Just looking at the draft objectives for the plan, they seem pretty sensible on the whole. Enhanced community interactions, restorative actions, have sustainable funding solutions, iwi cultural values are understood, and Indigenous biodiversity is protected. But item D, waterways within the Whangamarino catchment are safe to swim in and take food from.
Yes.
When's Lake Waikare going to be in that state?
That's a requirement of Te Ture Whaimana.
Is it?
Yes. So that's a core.
So that's an 80-year. It doesn't.
It's an 80-year. Yeah. I mean, all of these things are not overnight fixes, which is why a commitment to long-term funding and a long-term commitment to the actions needed is critical. But Te Ture Whaimana talks about a river, so the Waikato River, of which this is part, being safe to swim in and take food from over its entire length. So that is our objective that we've included in this.
And over the page, you're talking about koi carp, active management of koi carp. We've just had Karakia Subcommittee, and they were talking there about koi carp and catfish, that when they dig out the drains, they're getting large numbers. They're required to euthanize them, and that nobody seems to want to use them for pet food or anything else. There are other models. Have you got any other thoughts about this? Because you note here, management of koi carp will be highly contentious and implementation. What are you thinking around this?
So a couple of things. First of all, in terms of WRC, we need to be clear what our roles and responsibilities are relating to koi versus other organisations. So I just wanted to highlight that the action plan will identify roles and responsibilities of different organisations. This action plan is not all WRC. So, for example, Department of Conservation has a critical role in managing pest fish species. The question about what can we do about koi and catfish and others, we have in the past done research trials around capture of koi at natural choke points, actually where the Pangarehu Canal leaves Lake Waikare, and looking at opportunities to utilise the koi biomass as fertiliser for plantings in other parts. Every koi we take out of the system is a small parcel of nutrients, but is also koi have a major impact in terms of resuspension of sediment. So by removing the koi, we help reduce the sediment resuspension, but we also take nutrients out of the catchment. And so the question is, can we do that is there a commercially viable way to harvest and utilise those? we don't think there necessarily is a commercially viable proposition there. Not standalone, but maybe if council and or DOC supported something like that, it might work.
Okay, I'm surprised we haven't done that. We've done studies on this in the past, obviously, and
Yes.
nobody's come up with it. Yeah, so, but you're actually signalling active management is the next stage that you're in.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Stu.
Oh, thanks. I was just trying to remember actually what's that annual budgetary provision we put into that COI research program doc? We're still doing that, aren't we?
I think it'd come to an end. It was at 60,000 a year for 3 years.
Okay.
Patrick Whaley would be the best person
Okay,
to
no,
ask, but
right.
it was that's this on order as far as I'm aware. Yeah, probably best directed to Patrick
Okay,
Whaley.
no, good. No, thanks, Mike. No, support the mahi. Just a question. I noted you said or whoever it is reporting to the Ramsar people in Switzerland, and I can't remember if the Ramsar status was achieved prior or post the flood protection scheme, and it was post, wasn't it?
Yeah, 1989.
89,
was when
okay.
it was designated.
So has there been much deterioration since 89, or is it just the fact we haven't had any improvement?
No, and I think the report, as far as I'm aware, the report is still being finalised. But from what we've seen, there are clear indicators of decline
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
since 1989.
okay, yeah, okay. No, thanks, Mike.
Robbie.
Just going back to the pest fish, like that's a policy of ours that we don't put those pest fish back in. So that's our staff does that. Doesn't mean everybody else does it. And in that discussion, like we were here the other day, there's still the discussion of herpes, and that's been used in Tasmania, and it sounds like the trial has really worked well. So was that right, Mike?
Yeah, that's right.
It sounded like the
Yeah.
results were quite good.
Yeah.
So it's I'd imagine to bring something like that, we're going to need approval from other government agencies and things like that. So it's a big, broad, blue sky discussion of how we go about this. Yeah, it's there's a lot of thought and yeah, I imagine, as Mike said, it's going to get and the discussion is going to become a lot more protecting your patch in the next discussion that goes ahead of what individuals or landowners are going to have to take on to implement the change.
Noel, online.
Yeah, thanks. So just touching on what Robbie was alluding to there, and I just wanted to make sure, because Mike's raised it, while raising the issue of land retirement, et cetera, these are all ideas that have been tabled and are on the table for discussion. No decisions have been made. But as Mike also alluded to, and Robbie, the tensions are starting. And of course, questions have been asked, who pays and the likes. So whilst it's all coming out on the table and people are starting to get a little perhaps protective, the hard work is about to start. And I think the last meeting, which I wasn't able to attend, some of that was touched on, and people are certainly starting to, and organisations are putting their stake in the ground. So the hard work starts from now on, I believe. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Oh, yeah, just responding somewhat to Stu about, decline has continued. It's been reported to Ramsar, and the Auditor General of New Zealand has come back at one point, I'm trying to think what year it was, and made some comments about needing to up the game. It was largely directed at the Department of Conservation, I think, but yeah, there has been ongoing decline.
Thanks for that clarity, Bruce. Jen.
Just on, if the tension's building now, is now the time that we're keen to hear next steps and thought governance? Mindful that our elections are not far away, but after that, maybe it's the right time. We can't just wait for the next annual plan to get funding for it. We need to strike when it right time. Do you have any thoughts on this latest update?
Yes, so these are my thoughts. I think we're reasonably settled now on a range of options, and we will go through an assessment process. We will then need to switch into implementation planning. In my view, that would be a good time to establish a governance structure around implementation of the action plan. Because we have governance reporting lines in place for the development of the action plan. We don't have that as yet for the implementation phase, and it's the implementation phase which is where the rubber hits the road in terms of dollars being spent and the need for monitoring the effectiveness of that investment and everybody being around the table doing their fair share.
I thought if people see us starting to put things in place, that might alleviate the tension. Kind of saying that for everyone in the room.
Yeah, so that through you, Chair, I think that's right. So what I'd hope is that early in 2026, we'll start putting that implementation planning together. The action plan itself isn't due to be completed until June of next year.
Thanks for that, Mike. Oh yeah, Pamela.
Kia ora. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just, noting that list and that included koi carp, also included that management of flows and levels within catchment, and the note that they would be tested prior to inclusion. Can you talk us through what that testing looks like?
Yeah. So we're using similar tools to this. So taken from the SIDF, so the Sustainable Infrastructure Decision Making Framework that we're trialling in Motu Karaka. So we're looking to identify a small group out of the 25 people who sit around the working group to work through a couple of workshops using multi-criteria analysis. So we look at the objectives, we look at all the actions, and we essentially prioritise those actions, which ones are going to best deliver on the objectives. So that process we're looking to do over the next 2 to 3 months.
With a small subset of the
Yes, yeah.
working group, and then does that go back to the full group?
And that would then go back to the full group for their review. Yeah, in the next draft of the action plan.
When you're testing these, both in that small group and then when it goes back to the working group as a whole, is testing just the ability of a mechanism to create the change, or is it the ability of the mechanism to create the change as well as the investment that would be required, or the economic impact should that choice be made? Is all of that wrapped into the part?
Because obviously in terms of the objectives, one of the objectives is that we have the funding. And obviously the funding is only going to be approved if there's a good business case for that to happen. So there's
Of course, sometimes when we have good business cases, we still don't get funding, eh? So,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
yeah.
So
Just wanting
we
to make
can't,
sure that we're,
yeah,
managing expectations in our community as well, and helping them understand that that the choices we make have implications. And
yes, yes.
yeah, because it can be really easy to say, oh, yeah, absolutely, we want to see lots of investment in this area. Equally, we want rates capped and we don't want any increases.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
that's the tension that I think it's really important when we're working with these groups in our community. I think that tension always has to be part of the conversation. Otherwise, we create expectations that can't be delivered on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Robbie.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think myself, as I've said I don't get to keep every meeting, but when they align with my diary, everybody sitting around that table, Pamela, understands that without central government funding, this is going to be very difficult to implement. because of the cost of it and the amount of land that may have to be retired to accomplish its goals. So I think there's a very good understanding around that it's not going to just be ratepayers of Whangamarino. They're going to have to pay for this. It's actually going to have to be some central government money to be able to do anything in there with some scale. As soon as I walked in the room for the very first meeting, that was discussed by Doc and Iwi and others, that as us as governors, we should be talking to politicians to get them to understand the significance and the cost of actually implementing this. So I hope that helps, Pamela. Thank you.
Sorry, just following on from that. I mean, of course, central government is under the same pressure that we are all under. And so I suppose, I mean, it's a reasonable ask that politicians at our level are having those conversations, but what other integration is central government having in this conversation, other than through, obviously, we've got DOC represented, but I just think that integrating that central government conversation as our community helps us develop a way forward will be instrumental in whether or not this can actually carry on. Because all well and good, we plan something and then say, central government, here's your portion to pay, and they say, maybe not.
I think that the timing around that integration is really important. It's like anything, the sooner they are in on the project, the better. So I think we have a motion in front of us that actually does pick up that. Sorry, was there someone else? Oh, Tracy, sorry.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, the comment I was going to say is, yes, it's almost as though the project has phases, though, in that, you know, if we went to government now, they'd say, well, what are the options? So if you went and said, oh, we've got an idea to do stuff somewhere for some money, they would say to us, shoo. If we went, we still need to say, this is a project we're doing. It is significant. It's probably one of the region's top 5 significant projects. Government will be coming back and having constant conversations with you. As Mike said, in June, this council set a target to have those options there, look at those options, preliminary costings, because we know we won't have details. And then what does funding look like? Because it's not just central government. There's a raft of others. We know there are sectors who are interested and keen. There are NGOs. We know we've got our landowners, we've got iwi, we've got WRA, and to actually look at that. And I think that will be part of the implementation. What is our funding and marketing of this? What do we want to do? But yeah, I just really wanted to thank Robbie for those comments. Sorry, Councillor Cookson, for those comments, because it has been a message from day one. This thing is at scale. The intervention is going to be needed at scale, and everybody is very aware of that.
Thank you for those comments, Tracy. Yeah, Mike.
If I may, Chair, the report to the Ramsar Convention, one of the potential outcomes of that is that the New Zealand government will need to develop a response plan identifying how they're going to rehabilitate or restore Whangamarino wetland. So,
yeah, I liken that to the Lake Taupo, Mike.
Yeah,
you know, that needed huge, and it was a national significance, and I think this should be as well in there. So I think it is a great case to follow on from what they've done in Lake Taupo.
Lake Taupo was very popular with ratepayers all over the region.
Right, thank you. So we have a motion there in front of us in 2 parts, obviously taken as one whole, but we also received the report as well as endorse the direction of travel for the action plan and continue the direct support of the working group going forward. Thank you, Councillor Cookson. Seconded, Councillor Downard. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. So thank you, Mike. You may say.
Councillors, this is a presentation that Louise and Melissa will give you on our 3-yearly survey. You don't have the finalised outcomes of the survey, but as we are anticipating those, probably after the last council meeting in September, we did just want to give you an indication of what some of the interim findings are. And it was also part of the suite that you're going to be getting in terms of this perceptions of the environment, followed by the Waikato progress indicators, followed by the Waikato Wellbeing project, to just paint a picture for you at the end of the triennium, just to help you understand how everything comes together. So to Louise and Melissa.
Right, yeah. And nice and close.
It won't bite, Louise.
So as Tracy said, we just have a short presentation of our initial findings. We have the data, but we haven't completed the analysis yet. We'll start with you, Louise. Yeah,
There
let's
we
leave it on.
Okay. Thank you very much. So a little quick introduction about this slide. Every time we do this survey, we try to establish what the most pressing environmental issue for the participants is. And in the past, what we've done is we leave them an open text box. We say, what to you is the single most important environmental issue within the Waikato region today? And then we also ask them in 5 years' time. And previously, we've given them an open text box and they can put whatever answer they want. This year, we've taken a different methodological approach. What we've done is we've taken all the findings from the previous year's surveys and we came up with a list. And so this was a list of environmental issues that previous reports have identified, as well as an other please specify in case we missed anything. And we asked participants to choose from that list rather than giving them a big burden of there's so many things to think about, I couldn't possibly choose. And so this time we've done that not only for the participants, but also for us, because unlike previous years, this year we're actually analysing the data in-house rather than contracting it. So I'm taking care of the numbers and Melissa's taking care of the in-depth explanations as to why people pick the answers they do. So if you have a look at this table, what you'll find is that the two most important issues, both now and in 5 years' time, are both climate change and water. So within each of these topics, there are a number of different aspects as well. So these are themes, these are overall topics rather than just climate change full stop. We did ask them about different aspects of climate change, different aspects of water. You can see that in the table. So if we compare this to past years, this is actually very similar to the 2022 report. Both water was also the #1 issue, with 42% of people last time saying now and 31% of people saying in 5 years' time. Likewise, climate change, last time 14% of people said it was their biggest issue now and 16% said in 5 years' time. So what this shows is that water has actually taken a second place to climate change. There is an increased recognition that to the participants, climate change is not only their most important issue now that they perceive, but also it will be the most important issue within 5 years' time.
So I'm just going to talk through the qualitative data, which is what people actually say in their comments. So this analysis seeks to map the spread of opinion, and it's done by paying attention to both the broad content and the specific claims and concerns that people express in their comments. For example, there are comments about the importance of water broadly speaking as a key to the life of ecosystems, the economy, or to human survival. And then there are comments that raise specific concerns such as drinking water quality or the part played by population growth in declining water quality or rates rises. So the table shows the impacts of climate change are a growing concern for regional communities, and that water issues, including quality and availability, continue to be of concern. Comments suggest that compared with previous surveys, there is growing recognition of the cumulative drivers of water quality decline and increasing recognition of the pressures on water availability in the region from reduced rainfall and drought. This time comments from residents who selected regulation. As you see, regulation is the third down the list on the table. As most important were more frequently about affordability this time rather than wasteful spending. And a number of comments draw attention to the impact of rate rises on those on fixed incomes. Comments about regional council specific responsibilities were most often claims about the lack of enforcement of rules. We have slide 2.
Okay, so as you can see on our new slide, this is a brand new question that we introduced with the growing recognition of climate change. We wanted to understand what in particular people are concerned about within the topic of climate change, as there are multiple facets to it. So we developed a list of possible options similar to the previous question, and we asked participants to indicate out of these options what concerns them most about climate change. And as you can see here, over a third of the participants selected extreme weather events. So people were 3 times more likely to pick extreme weather events than the previous most popular option, which would be rising temperatures. So that indicates from a significant concern from the participants as well. And when we asked them to indicate how concerned they were about climate change on a scale, over a third of the participants also said very concerned. So there is a growing concern about this issue.
So the key takeaways from the qualitative data here is that residents are concerned about extreme weather events because, in their words, they're happening more and more, they are unpredictable, and we are not prepared. So some comments also reveal a recent personal experience with a climate weather event. For example, one resident commented, "The drought we have at the moment is the worst my parents have ever seen on our land." Residents' concerns about extreme weather events is most often expressed in terms of prevention and preparedness rather than adaptation and resilience. Although adaptation is sometimes referred to, the term resilience is not present in the data. For example, one resident commented, "Climate change won't get better by itself, and if we aren't prepared to do anything about it now, then it will only get worse." Another comment, "There are more major events happening and people are not prepared or do not know how they can help." So comments suggest that residents understand preparedness to extreme weather events to be about local planning that informs households and businesses of what they can do to be prepared on the one hand, as well as actions taken by central and local government that will reduce the extent of expected impacts. Prevention is expressed in terms of actions such as redirecting flood flows, reinforcing riverbanks, removing forestry slash, and changes to farm systems and water use to align with hot, dry conditions. Comments also suggest a growing awareness of the knock-on impacts of extreme weather events to the cost of living, especially food, insurance, and rates. The comments show that there is increased recognition that the impacts of extreme weather events can be large and spread throughout society rather than localised and affecting only some people. And this may be what's behind the increase in concern for particularly extreme weather events. So we hope we've whetted your appetite for the full report, which will be available at the end of October, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Just a quick one for me to start. Just around that water quality, were we able to break it down into those that are concerned about what comes out of the tap compared to those that are concerned about what's going down our streams and rivers? Is that easily discernible, or sort of it was more a generalisation on water quality as a whole with different concerns for different people?
Yeah, those that selected water quality off the drop-down list, and then we have a whole lot of comments where they get to say why. And there's, I haven't got it off the top of my head, but there was a lot about drinking water. There's lots about, fouling in the river. There's too many logs in the river. There's, rubbish in the river. Then there's more kind of general concern about if we don't get water quality right, then, this is going to affect everything, our economy, our quality of life. So once the full report's done, you will get a lot more detail about that.
Thank you. Katarina.
Kia ora, ladies, well done. Anybody who does a survey is good on you. A couple of things is one, is there a comparison in your survey between rural and urban residential? That's the first one. The second one is, did you take into context the COVID impact that may have happened to put some highlight on your survey between both rural and urban? Because COVID was a big hit to lots of people, not just disasters of earth and whatever. And for me, it is. Did you, for instance, have a good comparison between one coast to the other coast? Because in our Waikato region, there's quite a long line of coast, but Moko compared to Raglan are two different coastlines, and their environmental and living ways are so much different. So I just wondered, did you manage to take into consideration the COVID impact, the region compared to the urban, and looking at how coastal towns are different from each other?
So we have asked participants whether they lived in urban, rural and semi-rural environments, and that will be one of the variables that I look at to see if that does change people's results and people's perceptions. That is going to be done, absolutely. In terms of specific coasts, we didn't ask that in-depth level. We asked about district, but to my knowledge, we didn't ask about postal codes or things like that in order to not identify participants too in-depth.
So my bad, I took it for granted that you guys may have done some traveling around and said, oh, desktop. So I wouldn't have asked a question if I realized it's desktop. And COVID-wise, did you look at the difference of what COVID impact it had before you started the interview or something like that?
Oh, okay. So we designed the survey and we contracted out data collection to a company called Versus, but given that the prior survey did take place in 2019, there is absolutely room to examine the potential impacts that COVID could have upon people's perception, particularly with people being at home and perhaps having more time in their hands to research certain issues. That would be something I would be quite interested in. But there is room to do that comparison and take those factors into consideration, absolutely. Thank you for the question, though.
I have a speaking order, so if I can just get Tracy a mic, please.
Councillors, just in the interests of brevity, the ladies have kept it very high level. What we usually introduce the final report as is that it is a representative sample of all territorial authorities around the region. So each territorial authority, we make sure, so to answer the question in terms of the difference between Moko and the difference between Whitianga, we actually have a representative sample of each of the territorial authorities, which takes account for some of that variability. And as Louise said, there is that specific question around rural, urban and semi-rural, because it's very important to understand that. And when Melissa does her analysis in terms of some of the provenance of some of the responses to get under the lid a bit more, you'll see that in October or November. Yeah.
If I may, I also sort of clarified as well that I will be creating district reports. So each district will get their own report so that they can have a look at their own specific issues as well. That was my apologies for not mentioning that. I should have.
Jennifer.
Thanks, that was my first question. Do we get to see those as well for our constituent councillors to
Absolutely.
know what their area is? My section is probably that first slide you had there, quite a reflection of how much each topic is in the national narrative. I think that the extreme weather events being the highest, and then a bit of temperature and availability. I think that we've done some really good comms about what we do as regional council, and that was part of our strategy. But I have heard over the last couple of that there's an interest with the TAs to do some comms together because of the same general info, and it'd probably be quite nice for it to be about what the public can do rather than what we've done, which is very much our organisations and view of the world. So that's something that would be really cool to flow into the future. That list there, thanks for explaining how you created it to jog people's memory when they're ready to answer. But I do wonder if that kind of leads to a lot of overlapping things. So, for
Yes.
example, pollution is air pollution, waste, climate, they all lap. So I do wonder if in future maybe the list, I know you want to keep things the same year, baseline to baseline maybe, but it might give us better answers if they're a bit more delineated.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
In the qualitative analysis, what you find is that whilst they've selected higher temperatures, they'll also talk about water. So that all comes out in the analysis.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is a lot of overlap between the different
That first question,
topics,
but
yes.
then it comes out through the other.
Yes, like, and they might select regulation, but then they'll talk about something else. So that all comes out when the full analysis is done.
Because I do worry when I see like 1% worries about loss of biodiversity, Bruce's here, but
Yeah.
I mean the impacts of loss of biodiversity can be,
Well, I
more
can-
significant than some of the climate impacts.
Yeah,
right?
well, I
So-
can say is that the types of comments about biodiversity this year, there seems to be a greater recognition and understanding about biodiversity than there has been in the past. So even though that isn't selected as most important, it seems to be becoming more well understood. So.
And my last one is for when you're doing the final report, I'd be really interested to deep dive into the regulation topic, just
Yes.
because I'm always really interested to know whether we're doing enough in that space, because I get the impression there's a perception we're not doing well enough, and I experienced that anecdotally in my own life, but we're always trying to weigh up what's the right amount, and then when we have comparative analysis other councils, we're actually not doing pretty good. So
Yes,
it's just really nice to get that from your report if you can.
That's the problem with the data for that question, and is that people often confuse councils. So
Yeah,
their comment will indicate that they're actually talking about Hamilton City, or so it takes a bit of untangling. But yes.
Bruce.
Thanks. I don't want to take too long because obviously this is only an interim stage, so I'll make it real quick. I'm just interested in knowing whether you're considering analyses which consider the comms and media releases of the council itself in relation to the results that you've had over now more than 20 years. And what is the extent to which this is leader versus follower in relation to what the council's doing itself? And I say that on the basis of knowing that water has always been at the top, but I believe that is largely to do with the focus of the regional council's narrative and the way that is perceived by the public. And that is also the reason that some other topics have not really showed up until now. So there is an analysis that could be done, I believe, in social science terms,
yes,
which considers your own consequences of what the media narrative is and what the comms narrative is that's coming out of council. And then the question is the leader-follower question. Are you driving the survey to some extent yourself in terms of the results you're obtaining? Or are you really getting a true reflection of what the community thinks are the key issues?
Yes.
That's my main comment. Thank you.
Well, I guess I would say in response to that this is the only survey that we do where we seek a representative sample. So we do actually get a very wide spread of opinion compared to a lot of the other surveys we do, which target particular populations. So I think that's the value in it. And I think it's quite difficult to untangle, to what extent we're driving and, we're takers or makers, or and I think that would be quite an investment to do that project. But we
I don't really
have
need
the
to untangle
capability.
it entirely. I think you need to do some simple correlations between the frequencies and quantum of what topics are that you're putting out over a period of 20 years and how that is reflected in the results that you get. That's all I'm saying, because I think you need to be aware of that.
Yes.
And because then, yes, your sample's representative, but the question is, what is the influence of the council itself on the result? Anyway.
Yes, I'm sure that you're quite correct in that there is an influence there.
Thank you. Chris.
Thanks, Warren. And really, I guess my question is
way related to what Bruce is saying, because I've very recently read the Hamilton City report, and they did a similar report. Their findings, and it wasn't focused on environmental issues, except that. So you're starting out with a loaded set of questions. I'd expect different answers, but these issues that you've identified do not feature on the Hamilton City questionnaire, and the answers are received. I think it is important that we have balance in there, so we understand what it is that our community and ratepayers actually rate as being key issues, drives their thinking and their concerns. Leave it there.
Thank you. Yeah, if I could just make a comment there, and Councillor Hughes, I think you're quite right. We do need to understand the purpose of this survey and why, and the other surveys that we undertake. Because at the workshop on Monday, these ladies had helped out our ICM team with the survey that we did that was very direct to, I think I'm going to say 167 or 137 landowners, and we got some really good data. So it is a survey for a purpose. It is region-wide environmental attitudes, but it's layers upon layers, and the HEC survey was asking different questions for different reasons. But when we take the kind of work that Louise and Melissa are leading and layer it up with all our other surveys, it gives us such a richness, and also an opportunity to validate where different responses have come in.
Tracy, Ben?
Oh, just picking up Bruce's point, in the sense of the wording. So if I said to you, harming waterways, that's different than saying negative impact on waterways. Harming is something, it's pejorative, and it's not surprising that you get most people agree that you shouldn't harm the waterways just to benefit agricultural production. So wording bias is something to consider.
We do review the wording of the questions every time we take the survey out, and there's always arguments on either side. So it really is a difficult kind of balancing act, because we want to speak in layman's terms. We don't want to speak policy speak, but at the same time, yeah.
There's also the issue of identifying trends as well. Sometimes we do keep certain phrasing in to allow us to continue those comparisons, since the survey has been done over such a long time. But you are right, question phrasing does influence participants' responses, absolutely.
Thanks for that. With no other questions, we have the motion there to receive the report. Thank you, Bruce. Seconder, thank you, Angela. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. Right, the next item in front of us is the Waikato progress indicators, and we have a very influential gentleman about to present before us, and so I'd just like to run through a couple of things around Bayet's time with us here at Regional Council. I believe he is leaving us for a well-deserved, by the look of this piece of paper, retirement and time with family and friends. But so Bayet started with the Waikato Valley Authority, which became part of WRC in 1985 as a water scientist. So that's 40 years with us, and we know how hard it is to get those timeframes out of some of our staff. How long they've been here, they tend to dodge that question. But Bayet has seen a lot and influenced a lot during his time. He has held various roles in the science team, in policy and in strategy. Over the last decade, Bayet has held the role of Principal Strategic Advisor. Bayet has been instrumental in the development and maintenance of the Waikato Integrated Spatial Explorer, and that links to economic, demographic, environmental aspects of the land use change to explore future scenarios. He has a strong interest in the wellbeing and has been responsible for the Waikato Progress Indicators, which are produced annually and obviously in front of us today. Has done research in ecosystem services, geothermal services, sustainability and spatial planning, and many, many, many other topics. There are 55 items in our library catalogue with Bayet as the author. Bayet had an interest and passion in spatial planning long before it was a buzzword and used by many. He has been influential in helping many ministry officials and local government colleagues understand the importance of spatial planning and incorporating economic, social, environmental and cultural matters. Much of the thought coming out of central government and elsewhere would have had its beginnings in the many conversations that Bayat has been leading over a number of years. So just from myself and the rest of the committee, Bayat, we'd like to wish you and your wife Sylvia all the best for the future, and may you enjoy lots of travels and time with family and friends.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and all councillors. That was sort of unexpected. I didn't think it would be a celebration here, but the fact that I'm here for that long, I guess, reflects the quality of the organization. And a lot of that has to do with the staff, obviously, but also with linking you, councillors, to the staff, executives and staff. And during my presence here over those 30, 40 years, that has been excellent. And I think it's a good reason why the Waikato Regional Council is being seen as one of the leading regional councils in the country. So, thank you very much again. Tēnā koutou katoa. So today, I'd like to just review the latest results of the Waikato Progress Indicators. And this is a completed project. So we've done the annual review. A lot of the information is on the website, including technical reports. I gave you one of the infographics that comes out as a product, but also there are dashboards on the website and other stuff. So I will do sort of a quick run through in terms of briefly what it is, and then go through some of the key results. I'm happy to take any questions as we go, or at the end, whatever you prefer. So what is it, WPI? It is sort of a high-level health check of the region. It is really taking the pulse of the region and looks across all the economic, environmental, and social critical factors. It is not a performance measure for council. It is much wider than that. Also, some of the 32 indicators are ending up in our planning documents and in our annual plan and LTP. So next slide, please. This scorecard that you get a copy of really summarizes all the 32 indicators on one page, and it gives you the changes over time. That covers sort of the last probably about 20 years of data. I come back to other analysis we do in terms of more recent trends, but this scorecard is really where we are looking at those long-term, medium-term changes. And as you can see, there's a mix of positive and negative trends there. At the moment, we look at sort of probably about 9 positive and about 13 negative changes and trends, and then the rest of them have no significant change. The next slide, please, summarizes those positive and negative aspects. The 5 largest positive ones are from increased road safety. We have done a lot of progress in terms of road safety, and that has been remarkable, not only over the last few years, but also way back. We have higher average income, so we're doing better in terms of the households. Also, at the moment, you wouldn't feel that, and that is reflecting those longer-term changes. Same growth in regional GDP. We have, on a per capita basis, in real terms of income and real GDP, we have made quite a bit of progress, and we are sort of the 4th strongest economy in the regional economy in New Zealand. We have reduced greenhouse gas emissions since those measurements came in, and we have looked at quite a bit of improved perceptions, what people think in terms of how safe they feel in their neighborhoods at dark, for example. So those indicators in the WPI are a mixture of survey type questions and then actual measurements, census data, field measurements, and water quality, and so on. So just to make the link between the previous item, we have included 1 or 2 indicators from those results of that survey about environmental perceptions in the WPI as well. Just briefly on the negative one, we are becoming lazier over the last 15, 20 years. That may be part of our sedentary lifestyle and having other work to do rather than enjoying ourselves in the environment and running around. There is a poorer perceptions of the community that they think they can make an influence in terms of council's decision-making. The way the survey questions is phrased is looking at your local council. So this is not looking at regional council specifically. The questions relates to your local council. And that is reflected all over New Zealand, not just in the Waikato, and it changes from district to district, for example. We produce more waste. We use more water. So those pressures on our natural resources certainly increased. And we need to find out a way to have a similar economy, but less and more efficient use of those resources. Over those recent years, there's also, we detect a lower level of cultural respect, and this refers to how people feel diversity in their communities. And that changed from about 60% having a positive feeling about that to only about 40% now. So, yeah, with all the recent changes of immigration, that's reflected. So next slide or next point. We look at, like I said, these are long-term changes. We also looked at the short-term changes, and generally there are similar patterns, but there are some significant differences. The best way to look at those changes is to have a look at the report cards, and I have a couple of examples here. If we look at, for example, the crime rate, which made a lot of improvements from around the from 2010 on down to 2015, which was the lowest. But recently, in the last 3 years, we had certainly picked up the crime rate, which is the indicator measures the reported crimes, what's called the victimization rate. So that's in the Waikato Police District, that has increased dramatically. The next one, the report card I would like to highlight is educational attainment, and that's level 2 NZCA. And obviously we have to change that indicator soon with all the changes going on. But this reflects again the peak level was achieved sort of in 2019 pre-COVID, and with all the disruptions that we saw in schools and generally in education through COVID, you can see that sort of a level of attainment is reduced over the most recent years. The next one is building activity. And we heard from Brad Olson this morning, you know, there's obviously quite a significant, in terms of the last few years, a fall in construction activity reflected in this indicator, which measures not just the number of consents, but the cost of consenting as well. So this is reflecting the total cost of these consents per annum and per capita. We saw a strong increase in the mid 2010 up to COVID again, and then obviously a very strong increase just before or during COVID, while there was a lot of money floating around and banks were happy to lending everything out. And so now, yeah, we have a reduction in that building activity. The last example I would like to take you through is public transport. Interesting, you know, from early on, we had a radical increase in public transport boardings, passenger boardings in the Waikato, and that went up to peak level around 2009, 10, and then a sort of steady decrease for various factors. Yeah, petrol became cheaper for a while, and you know, more roads being built, so people find it convenient to take their car again. And then obviously COVID had a dramatic reduction again, but we are on the right track again. So the last 3-4 years, we have recorded significant increase in public transport boardings. Next slide, please. So something else that WPI does is to look at us benchmarking the Waikato against New Zealand average. How are we comparing with the rest of New Zealand? The diagram shows, the circle shows average values of New Zealand. If the spoke is pointing outwards and has a green dot at the end, that means we are doing better than average New Zealand. If it's inwards and has a red dot, then we're doing worse. And some of the gray areas are we pretty much the same. And for many indicators, we are similar to New Zealand average. But exceptions are Waikato Maori speakers Te Reo Maori speakers, and that's obviously reflecting our Maori population relative to other regions. We are generally feel socially connected in our communities, and people take pride in their neighborhoods, which again is really important, but it is declining if we look at trends overall over the years, but it is stronger than other regions and average New Zealand. We do worse in road safety, even if we have all these improvements compared to national figures, we still do worse than that. And that has, again, various reasons. We have a strong transport network in the Waikato. A lot of that is transient. It's not within the region, but going through. And we have a lot of road networks as well. Crime, we do worse than average New Zealand, not dramatically. The beauty, I guess, of this diagram is that the length of the spoke depicts the size of the change of the difference. So if the spoke is going out quite far, like the term Maori speakers, then that means there's a big difference between national and region. And similar in terms of crime, if you look on the right-hand side, it's marginally within that sort of average of New Zealand, but it is worse. Building activity, regional GDP, household income, those are all slightly worse than national average, and Brad Olson sort of confirmed that from Infometrics data. So these data reflect the latest available data, not over time, trends over time, long term, but short term, the latest data. Next slide. Brad Olson, I think, was a good example that what we have to do with these high-level indicator data is actually drilling down into the level of detail that is needed for good analysis. And Councillor Hodgson mentioned that before. We really need to look at, for example, locally, is it West Coast, East Coast, per district, even within neighborhoods within Hamilton, quite different levels of deprivation, poverty, and other factors. So what the WPI does is at the top level in terms of aggregating a lot of data into what we call an indicator. For example, for water quality, there's one indicator, but it is aggregated by a lot of different data. So underneath, we have much more data, water quality up to 10 or even more measurements from nitrogen to E. coli. So these are supporting the development of those indicators, and we can drill down. Place-based, I think by locality, by district, for example, is an important factor, and a lot of the indicators, WPI, we have at the district level. An example is what we do with the national survey about not water quality, but people's quality of life. So this is a national survey every 2 years, and looks at how people perceive their quality of life. We do that jointly with Hamilton City, and then we do all the districts in the Waikato region. Hamilton pays for Hamilton City, and that's obviously a big component. Again, these data are published on the website, and here just a little bit one example of people's pride in their local neighborhood. You can see a regional scale results can mask quite a bit of differences between different districts. So on the left-hand side, the region is, I think, 63% think they feel, have a good feeling about the neighborhood in terms of how proud they feel. But if we look at some of the other factors, it varies from Waitomo, 47%, Hamilton 51% in urban areas, and then 73 in Thames Coromandel and 82 Meremere-Piako on the top. So yeah, these are indications about those local differences that we need to look at. We also drilled down in terms of people's age. We find that younger people are less likely to feel proud about their neighborhood than the age group 65 plus or even 50 plus. And yeah, that sort of reflects generally across the country. But really the importance of that slide is that more analysis required. And we are fortunate that we provide the data to a lot of other organizations and the TAs, but also to like the Waikato Wellbeing Project, and that's a good segue into the next presentation, that do some excellent insight studies on a more level of detail. And this is really, I guess, getting away from the data rich, but information poor symptom that we often have. So it's good that the data are being used to its maximum. The purpose of the WPI is to have a consistent set of data that is shared. And by providing that, we have consistent analysis and also cost effectiveness in terms of using the same data for different purposes, internally and externally. I think that's all what I'd like to say. Any questions? Happy to take.
Thank you for that comprehensive report, Ben.
Unless it was Bruce first.
Oh, it doesn't matter who's first, so it's all fine. Yeah, look, I just want to congratulate Bayat for his contribution today and the way he's outlined it's not just the reasons for the particular indicator, but the limitations and the need to drive down at greater detail. One him and I have talked about before, extent of vegetation. While there's been no change in extent of vegetation in the Waikato, there's been a significant change in the health and condition of large chunks of that vegetation. But he's given us what the assumptions are and told us about the limitations. But the main thing I wanted to do was congratulate him on what he's contributed to this region of ours. He's a big picture guy. He's always been a big picture guy. I remember the first time I met him, he won't remember that. About 1985. And I was struck immediately by the big picture story. And he's continued to do this throughout his career. And what he's provided to the Regional Council is remarkable. And at the point that he made, puts us in a position which puts us ahead in many cases of many other councils in the country due to the work of people like Bayat. So thank you.
Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah, it's interesting to see a trend from 2007 to 2024. And I note here that some of these things may actually have a uniting factor: lower frequency of physical activity, levels of social connectedness dropping from 63% to 49%, lower levels of cultural respect. That was the beginning of the smartphone and social media, 2008. It may link all of those factors together because we've certainly seen a radical change.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite right. And that's another aspect that in terms of drilling down, we need to do. We need to link different indicators to each other. And you're like the one physical activity. We also see some connection to a reduced level of health reported by people in surveys. So all that obviously is linked. And especially the environment and the economy is linked, as you know. So if we have pressures on resources, we need to think about the economy and water quality and health, and not just health in terms of drinking water, but health of recreation, health of being there out in a lake and in the stream provides that sort of mental well-being that we usually don't make the connections.
And normally 40 years in the past used to be a gold watch. I don't know what it is today, but clearly you still have your health and your faculties in leaving, and you'll presumably have a wonderful retirement. So yeah,
thank you.
Thank you for all your work.
Thank you, Vin.
Jen is online.
Yeah, thanks. And thank you, Bert. It's been such a joy to have you around, and I really appreciate your work. I assume the district level data we can drill into online, or where can I find that?
Yeah, so district level data are available for all of the quality of life survey. And like the graph I showed, so that's in the technical report available on the website.
That's great, thanks. And this one's actually for Karen, sitting in the back, and it's just these progress indicators feed into our strategic direction workshop coming up, don't they?
Karen is nodding yes.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Jen. Robbie.
We go back to that last slide, please. Because maybe that should be a part of our spatial planning where we're going with that, is that there's some communities out in the mountain, and yet their lifestyle and what they think of their community is far greater than it's nearly double of Hamilton. I think that needs to be bored down into a bit more, that big cities are not actually where people want to live. It's actually a bit more. Is that possible to dig down and deep and understand why those communities are feeling so much more better about how they're living in that space? And
Yeah,
because that should be a part of our spatial planning, if that's what drives communities to feel better within themselves, we should be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, certainly this information feeds into, you have probably seen the spatial plan data inventory. So all that data feed into that inventory and will be used either by district. We can, like Councillor Hodgson mentioned, in terms of urban-rural split, I think that's quite important to look at that. And I think the next item on the Waikare Wellbeing project did quite a bit of work in terms of drilling down in detail about what people think in rural areas as well around the hierarchy. So, I think it certainly can be done and is important. The WPI actually was built on a 18 months long process of finding out what the community wants, what really matters to them in terms of community outcomes way back 29, I think, by Wendy Boyce. And so we also ask those people and stakeholders, including businesses, how would you measure success? And that's how we build those 32 indicators. So they have that relevance, and that's why they feed back into our strategic directions and purpose. Whether we need to do another maybe exercise as part of the spatial plan about what the community, how they see our region in 20, 30, 50 years will certainly be interesting. Maybe can work with the districts and organizations like Waikare Wellbeing.
Yeah, as you said, like when nearly, was that 40% of the graph there shows that they like living in their community more than some others.
Yep.
That's a huge statistic to go into what's the best way of our communities to live in the future.
Yep.
Yeah, that's all I'm getting at. And if you put like Thames Coromandel, if you put an Otrahonga, if you actually mix those up and see what the outcome was of some of those higher ones compared to Hamilton, it'd be an interesting statistic what comes out of that. Why are they feeling better? Is it that they've got greater open area spaces, or is it connections to their community, or what is actually the bottom line of why they're coming up with that? Yeah.
You.
No, just tautoko anau ngā mihi kia koe. I really enjoyed working with you for, nearly 15 years now. So I've even got halfway to your record, but just all the best for the future, and enjoy your retirement. Yeah.
Thanks, Stuart.
Thanks for that, Stu. But no other questions. We have the motion for us to receive the report. I'm happy to move. Jen's happy to second. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. And once again, Bayat, all the best for the future with you and your family. And I believe you've just become a different statistic from being employed to now being able to be employed, but not. So, yeah, excellent way to go. Thank you. Righto, guys, we're going to rock through these last few items, and then I'm sure you'll appreciate lunch way better. So next one up is the report on the Waikato Wellbeing project, and we have Karen and Harvey, is it, to run through that for us?
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, councillors. This picks up the thread started with our economic discussion this morning with Brad, the conversation that followed through with the environmental perception survey, and then Bayat's holistic view across the region and across all indicators, and also speaks to the points you've raised about how do we really understand what's happening in our communities and for individuals? And what are the interventions that might make a real difference? The Waikato Wellbeing project dives deep into understanding communities and then builds a bridge with policymakers and funders who might be able to support communities to actually shift the dial on these issues. So with that, I shall hand over to Harvey to bring you up to date with what they've been doing for the past 12 months. So
Great. Thank you, Karen. And does this work automatically? Yeah. Good afternoon, councillors. I suspect I'm between you and lunch. So I will make it relatively brief. Can I just also acknowledge Bayat? I've only known Bayat, I think, 25 years, so I'm a recent friend. But it's been really an honour to work alongside Bayat in many, many different ways over those years. And Bayat, I'm going to miss you. I don't know quite how to do this job without you, but thank you so much. Councillors, I was asked to do this in 4 slides, so I have. So we'll try and keep it pretty brief and pretty quick. I'll assume you've read the paper. If we just go down, there's lots about the project. I can describe it in a number of different ways, but I've tried to keep this actually really, really brief in terms of what we do. And so there's just 4 words I'm going to use. The first is listen. And I think I heard this a little bit too in terms of the environmental perception survey that was summarised to you today. The good thing, if you like, about the Waikato Wellbeing Project is we're not delivering a service. We're not trying to convince anyone to buy or use anything. So we're really, really interested in what people really think. And for us, that's all about what matters to people, what really drives their well-being. And so we go from the grassroots up, if you like. There's 2 examples on the slide there. The Hauraki opportunity, which we have just finished, which was started after Cyclone Gabrielle, where we were asked by the councils of Eastern Waikato, help us to understand our communities better so we can make better decisions post-recovery. And so that piece of work has just been finished, and there's a webinar on the 3rd of September, which you can join if you like. To give you an example of the results of that, which I think were really, really quite amazing, and it's similar to Councillor to what you were just saying. Older people are much happier in Coromandel than other people, but if you look also in terms of what really matters to people in especially the Thames Coromandel area, the #1 priority is paediatric dental health, rotten teeth, and probably someone sitting in a room like this, I never would have guessed that. And so #1 priority for them is help our kids get better teeth. And so it's just listen. And then we work with councils, health organisations, Māori organisations to how can we make those things happen. On the right there, the Rangatahi opportunity was one of our first big projects around youth wellbeing, and everyone is involved in this, I know. What we did is we asked youth to lead the project. The #1 priority is we need better mentors and leaders for our kids. Those are the kids saying that. And so through our video program, lots of little fires, we have profiled some extraordinary youth leaders and youth organisations in the region. And through those stories, we help to attract resources to them. An example is we did a story on Western Community Centre and the incredible things that they do, and we helped attract $500,000 to them for a new extension to their facility. Next slide. So we listen and then we combine that lived experience with more traditional research and data and knowledge so that we can learn what's really, really going on. And one of the big things for us has been food deprivation and hunger. And so many people have said to us, why in the food bowl of Aotearoa, New Zealand, is anybody hungry? So we did some analysis on food. What we found were a couple of things that might interest you. Even though food's expensive and it's getting more expensive over the last 10 years relative to increases in median salaries, it's actually got a little bit cheaper relative to median salaries. So something else is going wrong here. It's not necessarily just the cost of food. When you put on that graph rent increases, it dwarfs it. And so for a lot of people, hunger is a consequence of unaffordable housing. It's pretty straightforward. And so that's really led us in other directions. The food shed analysis that I show you there is we didn't really have much of an idea of how much food we actually have in this region. And so we've had an analysis done looking literally farm by farm. And we've found that this region produces 7 million tonnes of food, which is a big abstract number. Doesn't sound meaningful. 95% of that is milk, by the way. But how much do we need to actually feed every citizen of the Waikato region with a perfect diet? The answer to that is about 360,000 tonnes. It's not that we don't have enough food. It's just that the distribution of that is not equitable at the moment. And the reason for that, I would say, one of the reasons for that is unaffordable housing. So the report on the right there, we're just about to release. We're calling it Hiding in Plain Sight. And I'm sure Mr. Olsen referred to this morning. People seem to be breathing a sigh of relief that house prices have moderated. But in Hamilton City right now, the median household income is $91,000 and the median household price is $788,000. 8 times. It's not affordable. And even if that stays that way for a while, it's not going to be any more affordable. So what we've asked is, what does that really mean in real terms? Well, let me tell you, if you have to save a 20% deposit and you can save 10% of your income every year to do it, which I have never been able to do myself, it will take you 13 years to save that deposit. If the trend of the last 30 years continues for another 10 years, that will be 21 years. If it continues for another 10 years, it'll be 28 years. So in other words, in 20 years' time, unless something changes, it will take my kids 2/3 of their working life to save the deposit for a house. It's not right. So we're going to release that report. We've also indicated what impacts that has on well-being in terms of health, education, general well-being and happiness. You can understand it all because it makes sense because we're all in this together. But what we have just done now is contracted Veros to do some work to say, what will it take to make housing more affordable? What will it actually take? It almost feels like a rude question to ask, but we're asking it. And what we mean by affordable is a ratio of 5:1. Which is an international definition of affordability at the upper end, according to people like Demographia. That work will be finished in around about November. And I have no preconceived ideas about what the answer is going to be. Next slide. We then leverage, like doing this today. Lots of Little Fires you may have heard of is our video storytelling initiative. And what I've really found out from that is that we don't need the answers. The answers are out there to most of our challenges. We just have to listen and we have to go out and actually hear the people who are experiencing these challenges. So Lots of Little Fires is a video documentary program. We've just released our 19th video, I think, on sexual abuse and sexual abuse survivors in the Waikato. What we do is capture that and then use that to advocate for change and advocate for additional resources. Talked about Western Community Centre. Another example is 2020 Housing, which looks after especially teen mums. When I say teen mums, I'm talking about as young as 13, 14, who are homeless, who are in motels, who are sleeping on couches. And through that video and working with MSD, we have been able to find new permanent safe homes for young mums. Not all of them by any stretch, but young mums in Hamilton. I advocate at council meetings such as Hamilton City, observing that the areas that don't have adequate 3 waters infrastructure in their city also happen to be the poorest areas of their city. Something's not right there. And supporting others who are encouraging Hamilton City to prioritise infrastructure in places like Enderley and so we use advocacy as our major tool. And then last slide. And then hopefully all of that leads to legacy. Our vision is our mokopuna are thriving. We used to have a very complicated, wordy, policy-ish vision, but our chair, Delwyn Abraham, sat quietly at a hui one day and she said, "Don't you mean our mokopuna are thriving?" And that, I think we can all understand that, because if we're not here for ourselves, we're usually here for our grandchildren, even if they are not yet born. And so that's our dream, that's our mission. That quote there is from a former Prime Minister. Some of you may be familiar with it. And we're reasonably relaxed about frameworks, whether it's the SDGs or Living Standards Framework or Te Whare Tapawhā. They're all great. But I think Kirk actually said it right when he said there are 4 things that matter to people. They have somewhere to live, they have food to eat, they have clothing to wear, and they have something to hope for. Now, Kmart may have taken care of the clothing to wear, but the others, I think, at the end of the day, it boils down to this, at least from a human well-being point of view. what you do, councillors, is extremely important, and I'm not saying that that goes in front of that, but I'm saying for the people we speak to in the real world, when we go and knock on the door in Beta or Melville or Kirapehi, they speak to us about, I can't afford the rent, I can't pay for food, I'm worried about the kids, I'm wondering what the future is going to be. So those are the things that we focus on. Kia ora, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Harvey, and thanks for the passion you bring to it. Ben.
Oh, I just wanted to know next phases for you. Firstly, Karen, I note here, page 111, Wellbeing Project, Well and WRC remain our most significant supporters today. So what do we put in to this project?
In-kind support, so we provide admin scaffolding, if you like, to support Harvey. So he would have access to systems, he can use our meeting rooms. It really is that. The cash funding comes from philanthropic trusts and community funders.
So if we're one of the most significant supporters and we're just giving you office space and computing, that you must get the rest of your funds from elsewhere, then it's still Well Trust then?
Yes, Well Trust is the dominant cash funder, but we also receive funding from Trust Waikato, and we also talk to others project by project. So, for example, we're doing some work in Maniapoto on lived experiences of Kai, and the Maz Foundation are the 100% funder of that.
And then page 119, you're talking about an overall projected co-funding cash and in kind of at least 3 million by June 2025. So that's obviously your target. How close are you to that?
We will exceed that.
Okay, good. And preferred option for new operating funding model by December 2025. Will you be coming back to us prior to December? Because obviously we're in an interregnum period.
Yeah.
And what is your future plan in the next 2 or 3 years? You know, what's the outline of where you're planning to head to?
Well, thanks, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Chair, we've established a transition leadership group to work specifically on that. And the first part of that was to do some stakeholder engagement to confirm that there is agreement about the need for the Waikato Wellbeing Project to continue, and I can say that that was absolutely confirmed. It was backed up by the independent review that we did earlier in the year, so we wanted to basically just recheck that for a start. The second part then was to say we've got 4 options really. Could we ever carry on just as we are? Could we break the project up into components and basically orphan parts off to different organisations? Because every part of our project does have partners. The third one is there a way for it to continue as a unified project, but maybe it changes in terms of structure, funding, priorities, etc. Or fourthly, in the absence of all of those, how do we have a orderly closure of the project and not add to the litany of disorderly closures that can happen if you're not careful about it. So we've now got to the point with our transition leadership group where option C is preferred in terms of continuing as a unified singular project. And now what I'm doing is exploring exactly what are the detailed alternatives under that. Should it be set up as an independent entity? Are there other funders? Are there other partners? How would we actually go about that?
But you've managed to raise $3 million. So moving forward, that's a substantial recognition of people. They value what you're doing and you've got funds to move forward. It's not.
Yes, well, that 3 million was cash and in kind.
Yes.
So what we do is every time we work with somebody, what we do is we evaluate what's the rough in kind value of that.
Right.
And we add all of that up. So that 3 million, about two-thirds of that is in kind.
Okay. Even so, there's funding sitting there. People are willing to contribute. Yeah.
Oh, they are.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, no. So the report to be received is the motion in front of us. Do I have a thanks, Stu, and seconded thanks, Bruce? All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. Thank you, Harvey. Thank you, Karen, for that. Right. We're on to the second to last one now, which is a standard submission summary report. It's all yours, Eliandro, please.
Kia ora, te komiti, and thank you very much again for the time to consider this report. I had only planned to give you again the very quick page reference numbers for the attachment, so I'll do that anyway. But from yesterday to today, we had the royal assent on the resource management, consenting and other matters systems changes amendment bill. So I'll make a bit of commentary about that in a second. But just to point to the main parts of this report, attachment 1 in page 125 of your agenda has a spatial representation of local planning processes of interest. Attachment 2, which is pages 126 to 136, has the tables for local processes that are being currently submitted on by council. So that is pages 126 to 132. Then our comments on both government proposals and our tracking of upcoming central government directions. So the government proposals are page 133, and the upcoming central government proposals in pages 134 and 136. And a change from the last report is that we've made a little additional category, and that is to account for the changes to the 2-5 mana. So it's a slightly different process. Attachment 3, which is in pages 137 to 38, is a spatial representation and some analysis of the approved and proposed fast-track processes by type, status, and stage. And I got Miffy here to help me if there are any questions in that respect. Just to note that this includes some processes under the Natural and Built Environment Act, so that was repealed, but we still have some fast-track processes going under that act and the Fast-Track Approvals Act. Attachment 4, which is pages 139 to 142, is the training wrap-up. The slides. Now on to very quick comments on the resource management amendment bill. So it received royal assent yesterday. In terms of some of the exceptions for the things that will come essentially mandatory for everyone to do from today, well, from the day after the royal assent, there's some exceptions for section 11, which is limits on extensions to the time to process resource consents for wood processing activities. Sections 28 to 32, and that is amendments to Part 6 of the Principal Act, and that is related to information requirements, processing steps, and times of consent applications. And then Section 71, which is amendments to Schedule 4. So those will be 2 months after the commencement date before they are enacted. Then there's another exception for something that will happen after 2 years after the commencement of the act, and that is an insertion by Section 66 of the Amendment Act, and it's related to making insurance against fines unlawful. That will take 2 years to actually happen. Then 2 more things of interest to you. One is a planned stop. So this was introduced by an amendment paper on the 12th of August 2025. And it talks about hearing and notification of plans to cease unless they are exempted. This will apply until the 31st of December 2027. And there are exceptions in the new subpart 5, and this includes new sections to the Act that are Section 80O to Section 80X. As part of the update that I had today, we asked our partner district councils to give us some information on the plans that they were likely to proceed with. However, given that this happened before the Act received royal assent, we'd rather give them the opportunity to make those decisions in-house and to make that information public in their own time, because under Section 80X, they have 90 days to notify if they will be withdrawing, continuing with the plans, or if they will apply for an exemption. And the third point is a late change to the rules in Section 70. So these are rules that relate to discharges that we control under the regional plan. And I asked Brent to help me if there are questions in that regard. So happy to take questions for you.
Thank you, Eleandro. And Tracy's now going to convert that to layman's terms. Thank you.
So yes, we have a new act, a bit of a patchwork act to be fair. A lot of what Alejandro talked about is coming up. I do just want to throw over to Brenton. I did text him, so I am giving him a bit of a lead in here. There are provisions that take effect from today. So the Act, usually an Act comes into force and it's about 3 or 4 to 6 weeks before it receives royal assent. This one got the royal stamp last night. So there are provisions that come in today. Brent has worked with Wendy to put out a press release. Brent, if you could just overview that for us, then I'll make another small comment.
Kia ora, councillors. I'll deal with that first one first. So, yeah, the Crown has made quite significant changes to the enforcement provisions of the RMA. It's really important that our community are aware of what those changes are. And the Crown is sometimes a little bit tardy in putting out information about that. So we have put out a media release today. For example, it's only fair for people to know that the maximum charge for an offence has gone for an individual from 300,000 to 1 million, and for a corporate entity from 600,000 to 10 million. Those are the sorts of things that people should be told about the day that they are live, and it's live today. And so we have put a media release out to make sure that our community are aware of the changes that government's made to those offences. So, and as Alejandro said, there's different provisions of the legislation that are coming into force at different times. In terms of the Section 70 stuff, I'll try to keep this brief because you would have seen different parties in the media putting a different particular lens to those changes. Section 70 of the Act as it currently stands talks about where councils can put in place a permitted activity, and you can't put a permitted activity in where there are certain, which would cause certain effects on the environment. There was some case law around that interpreted that as if those effects were existing already, you couldn't have a permitted activity. That resulted in an amendment to the law which enabled councils to have a permitted activity in certain circumstances, but not all circumstances. And the submission from this council, which I fully endorse, was that where these circumstances exist already, council does have the ability to put in place a permitted activity. It doesn't say that it must, or it just says that it can. And so that's the amendment to Section 70 that has happened. It doesn't permit a whole bunch of other discharges. It just gives this council the ability to put in place a permitted activity where certain existing effects occur. It's subject to conditions. Then that permitted activity must have conditions attached to it that will provide improvement over time. Yeah? And of course, it doesn't obligate a council to do so. It just gives the tool to the council if it thinks that a permitted activity framework is appropriate in those circumstances. And if we come back to PC1, this council and the court wish to put a permitted activity for low impact activities. And this change will enable this council and the court to put in place that permitted activity for low impact activities. Hope that's clear.
Thanks for that, Brent. Noel, online. You there, Noel? You're muted if you are.
Sorry, I hopefully not now. Am I okay?
No, we can hear you, thanks, yep.
Okay, so page 130, Waikato District Plan Review. Earlier this week, Carolyn Ratt came and spoke, or assisted Tracy, etc., with the coastal plan, and she mentioned, as an aside, that there were 2 appeals left in the Waikato District Plan, which, if settled, would make the Waikato District proposed plan operative. So, about 36 hours ago, I was brought into a discussion which came to Bruce and then to Pamela. And so the 3 of us met with Alejandro yesterday, and Bruce has asked me to introduce this because he's going to follow up with a bit of stuff. And so essentially, the one that's we discussed yesterday involves transferable development rights. And for those who don't know anything about TDRs, essentially Franklin District, when it was split up, its district plan was given to Auckland, Waikato and Hauraki, and they became sections of the district plans. In the Franklin plan, it allowed for TDRs, and so there were certain areas where you could create a title, and I said on hearings that would create them on ridge lines or over stockyards or whatever, and those would be created on paper, and they would then be sold, and they could be landed in specified areas around town, such as Pukekohe, Tuakau, and further north into the north part of Franklin. So, okay, in 2022, Waikato District proposed plan was published, and submissions, etc., and ultimately appeals were heard. And during that proposed plan, we shut the door on, when I say we, I was of the district at the time, shut the door on TDRs. And we'd done that prior to the release of the plan, and the Auckland and Waikato joined together and stopped it. That was appealed by one specific party and a court case, and that resulted in the TDRs being allowed for that specific site, etc. So my understanding from the discussion yesterday and what I was brought into was the appeal that's by a group up at Buckland, which is immediately to the south of Pukekohe and just north of Tuakau. And there's a road that joins the two through to Pukekohe and on into Papakura and Auckland. Long story short is that there's about 200 or 300 houses, I think it is 400 houses proposed on land, and they want to utilise TDRs, etc. And in the regional plan, it allows for TDRs, and I think they're operative in Waipa for existence. So it's not contrary to the regional plan, but Waikato District had said no, and there's an appeal that wants to put them in place. So Bruce, I'm going to hand over to you now, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm just interested to know if there's any update from our meeting yesterday, and I'm somewhat concerned that when we get the paper like this and the way that it's written, it's extremely concise, and we are sort of left in the dark on what the significance of this item is. This is a very significant item because it holding up an operative plan for Waikato District, and it's also a subject of apparently a subject which could end up being a situation where we might hold a different view than another council, a district council. I'm just concerned that the way it's in the paper just hasn't really given us that heads up that as councillors, because we've had people coming in from the side, communications coming into us. We're not really aware of the significance of the problem. So first of all, has there been any update? And then just really asking for, in the future, for better heads up.
Thanks for that, Bruce. I'll go to Alejandro. Answers to that.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillors Clarkson and Smith, for the question and the preamble. Just one thing to notice, and it's the provisions in the Waikato Regional Policy Statement that enable the use of transferable development rights or similar tools. Which could also be for the purpose of public conservation, so conservation lots as well. In terms of the update, there's been no update since the discussion we had yesterday. What I can comment on in terms of the contents of the report is that we're happy to review how we present the information best. We'll take guidance from Tracy as to how we work that to make sure that we strike the right balance between being concise and providing the right level of information in case it needs to trigger any follow-up from councillors. Tracy, if you got any comments?
Can I just jump in there, guys? One of the issues that was of concern for me is that the district made a plan, it went out, it's been appealed, and the general process with councils is that once the politicians have made that decision, they get out of it. Now, Waikato District had an appeal committee which gave guidance to staff on what the intent was, etc. And I at the district, I chaired that, so I'm not sure whether I've got a conflict or not. I don't think I have. But the reality is, the process is once the councillors have done their bit, they leave staff to get on with it, with the delegations they have. We are not part of those delegations, so we have to be careful about governance and management here. That's my point. Thanks.
I would just like to give council some confidence that there are delegations that are conferred upon staff to join appeals and 274 parties, and there are I guess, comprehensive documents that are written, because we don't go into these lightly. I think Alejandro said it very well, but we can have a look at the way that we give you information. What it does highlight to me is the importance of understanding the full ramifications of submissions that we make to district plans in the first instance. And I can say without any fear of anyone pulling me up on this, the Waikato district plan and our involvement in that in submissions has been the most comprehensive of the last 4 to 5 years in terms of participation. So this wouldn't have been a surprise from anybody. What we also have to be very mindful of, and it will be part of what we look into, is that the matter is before the courts. So we do have to be purposefully circumspect in what we report. The way around that is to have a standard publicly excluded session where we can give more information. As Alejandro said, we'll look into that to get the right balance of it. I'm very mindful that any of these that go to appeal, if you are approached by anyone, as any council has done, many councils have done in the past, give us a bell and we'll help step you through it. But we are mindful that ultimately it will be staff that will be standing up in front of the Environment Court defending positions, but I'm also only too aware that constituents ring you as well as they ring us.
Thank you. Was there anything else, Bruce?
No, that's fine. It is a question of us being in a picture, though. We're not trying to interfere with operational matters. But when stuff comes in, and we did, of course, we pulled a meeting in order to get a briefing. But having read the document, I think there are some aspects of it, particularly the fact that this is so important for Waikato District Council's plan, which could have been highlighted because, and again, this may not be an open forum, the place to discuss it, but there are risks involved here, which possibly also might end up in a risk assurance committee.
Thanks, and I think staff have noted that. Thanks. Tracy's writing it down. Stu.
Oh, thanks. With regards to the water services bill, and note the exclusion, for want of a better word, of Te 35 mana catchment. Just a question about the Taupo catchment. In my reading, I see your points there about the kaupapa kaitiaki and not being mentioned, but does that mean, well, two parts, the water in the Taupo catchment is still part of Te 35 mana catchment, and B, can the district council conceivably have wastewater discharges that undermine what we already agreed to through the Taupo cleanup process?
So Alejandro's looking at me. I'll grab this one. You'll be aware that was one of our key submission points.
Yeah.
And it also got a bit of an hearing through Radio New Zealand and some press. We got some confidence from Taumata Arawai that it isn't an issue. I think now that we've, that was going through the process, now that we've seen the whites of the eyes of the bill, or we will shortly see it, we need to double check that.
Yeah.
In terms of Te Kaupapa Kaitiaki and the vision and strategy, of course, Te Kaupapa Kaitiaki doesn't have the status of the vision and strategy. So it is, I would say, a less powerful instrument, but that is something that we're looking into, as well as a raft of additional changes that we will likely see come through with the new water services legislation. It's not this week, next week.
Yeah, because just noting Ben's comment about, the whole region contributed to that, it will be we need to remind the government that they're about to undermine.
Yes, and that was really what Radio New Zealand journalists picked up in our submission, where we had said it was $80 million contribution of taxpayers and ratepayers' money. Potentially this could undermine it. Taumata Arawai gave us the assurance that it wouldn't. Now we just need to see the final view of the bill, and there'll be a conversation there if we think it will.
And all those farmers are on 900 nitrogen caps.
Correct.
And
Pamela.
Oh, I was just going to just way back in on the Councillor Smith and Councillor Clarkson's issue that they raised. I take your point, Tracy, about things being before the court, but this is an issue that has been raised certainly with the three of us, and I want to make sure that we have access to sufficient information to make sure that we're across the issue. And I also just, I reflect on perhaps some of the headlines of previous trienniums where you had, WRC taking on district councils and things like that, and that created an image of disharmony and lack of cohesion and lack of collaboration and sort of Big Brother kind of vibes. And I think we've come a long way as a region this triennium in terms of acknowledging our partnership with our TA partners and wanting to work as constructively as we can. And so I just want, I would like further information around this particular matter. And I take on board that we can look into the future about how we report things, make sure that councillors get a fulsome view. But on this particular matter, I would like some further engagement.
So through you, Mr. Chair, Alejandro, if it's the one particular matter, Alejandro gave a pretty comprehensive briefing note. If there's further information, if you can just send us an email. We are in a pre-election period. It is quite important that we receive that formally and respond formally.
Thank you for that, Tracy. Ben.
I was just going to say, I don't understand a thing of what you guys were talking about. So
The whole time, or?
Yeah, everything. Since 9 o'clock, 9:30, yeah. But I wonder whether a paper couldn't come in closed session of full council, just setting out the details, if that's useful.
That's something that we'll consider. It's no different to a lot of things that we are progressing through the court. It is very important to some constituents, and I understand that. Yeah, it's a matter that's before the court, so the decision is actually going through the court. I'm happy to give a briefing paper of the information that's been shared to date. In fact, it's pre-election period, so if it's asked for, it probably needs to be public to all councillors. I'm just loath, you can see I can't talk about it because it's a matter before the court, so I'm kind of shadow boxing now, so it's difficult. I don't know if it's worth the value.
Thank you, and that would be my thoughts around it too. Thank you, Tracy. Is there anything else on the submission summary report before us? If there's not, I'm happy to move that, and thank you, Robbie, for a second. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. And we're on to our last very brief report back. Alejandro, I believe it's with you regarding the Waikato Regional Policy Statement Annual Implementation Report.
Yeah, and still me and Sydney, and if I may just still 2 seconds to address what might be a potential concern. So we do work proactively with councils. So as you would have seen from Don's submission on Rotorua Plan Change 8, we work with them before notification. However, there's always technical matters of difference that remain, and that's what we try to address through the submissions process. But as much as possible, we try to work proactively with district councils to avoid getting to the appeal stage if necessary. So over to Sydney.
Okay. Good afternoon, all. This is very brief. This report is to provide the annual update on implementation of the Waikato Regional Policy Statement, WRPS. I will just note that there was an error in the way that the attachments were displayed in the agenda. One attachment was duplicated as attachment 1 and 2. The addendum has added in the missing table that should have been on page 147 of the agenda. Part of this analysis examines how the WRPS guide guides district plans to follow regional policies. This includes support for reviews and changes in territorial authorities' district plans and input in the resource consent process. This year's implementation report has a focus on the ecosystems and Indigenous biodiversity topic of the WRPS. Informal and formal feedback and advocacy that WRC contributed to TAs from April 2016 to June 2025 was analysed and is displayed in categorised tables as attachment 2 of the addendum. This analysis is focused on the methods where the WRPS directs a district plan to give effect to regional policy direction. Common topics included biosecurity, eco-advocacy, native species, biodiversity offsetting, and water quality. Less frequently mentioned topics found included vegetation clearance and pest management. We consider that this could reflect the characteristics of the region or a limited availability of such ecosystems information for subject sites. Implementation of most methods is on track. Of the 43 projects in this report, 4 are off track and 4 have been halted. This is due to resource constraints, changes in strategic direction, or practical considerations around similar work in other programs. These projects, programs, and activities were identified as being required to assist with implementation of the WRPS. It is not expected that all the WRPS methods will be implemented at once, but this occurs over the 10-year life of the plan. Work is currently 78.57% on track, which is an increase since last year's report. The WRPS is being implemented through the 3 implementation streams. As part of ensuring a continued focus on implementing the WRPS, staff work across directorates to give effect to its policy direction. This includes preparing changes to the WRPS to give effect to changes of national direction. I can now take questions through the chair.
Thank you for that, Sydney. Are there any questions? No. I think, any final comment on that item, Tracy?
Yeah, just to give councillor some confidence again, whilst the regional policy statement is up for review, because it is 10 years since it was operative, we will not be reviewing it in light of what's coming through the pipeline from central government. So the RPS is going to be stripped down and turned into the start of the spatial planning process. So where there are some challenges with the RPS, we will address it through then.
Thanks for that, Tracy. Robert, yes. Happy to move. Thank you. Happy to second. Thank you, Ben. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. That brings us to the end of today's agenda. I will get Brooke to close us with a karakia. Thank you, Brooke.
Unhia, unhia, pardon me. Unhia mai te uru tapanui, ke wātia, ke mama, te nākau, te tinana, te henenaro. E te ara takatu, koira, e runga, e whakairia, ake ke runga, ke tina, haumie, huie, taiki.
Thank you very much, Brooke. Thank you, councillors and staff. So not only do I hold the record for the shortest one, I'm having for the record for the longest meeting, but thank you very much.
Should have. I didn't think it would be this long.
She didn't bring me a copy.